Future Now Show. Brought to you by the Club of Amsterdam.
Dear participants, a very warm welcome to this Future Now show, which is organized by the Club of Amsterdam. My name is Mario de Vries. The last 12 years, I was a lecturer and business consultant in the field of information technology. And the last 5 years, I specialized in data analysis and impact management. Normally, in the Future Now show, we present success stories and promising opportunities. Today is going to be a little bit different. Today we dive into the world of impact investment and why it fails. I'm honored to introduce to you Mr. Robert Rubinstein, who has an impressive background in impact investment and in really making a difference. Mr. Rubinstein, may I call you Robert?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you very much. Robert, can you please elaborate on the catch-22 question, to be profitable or to be sustainable?
Well, there's not really a trade-off if you want to do it. I remember there was a very successful Dutch endowment from The Hague, and they had 500 million in assets under management. And he wanted to start doing ESG at the time and impact. And his advisors from the wealth manager said, "Oh no, if you do that, you're going to lose all your money. Bad idea, blah, blah, blah." So he said, "Okay, I'll find somebody who will do it." And then all of a sudden that wealth manager was very happy to offer those services because they could write hours and make money. So they did it and it started, and each year they try to do more and more and more and better and better. And after about 5 or 7 years, he said to me, "Robert, it's not really hard to do if you want to do it, but it's really hard to do if you don't want to do it." And that's really what when we started 25, 26 years ago, it was very challenging convincing people that you could make a market rate return and have a social environmental added value. Our role was not to be a conference organizer. Our work was to change the financial system so it worked for all stakeholders. But when we started, it was very, very difficult. Everybody thinks in Europe it went so easy. That's absolutely not true. But if you ask anyone who has money, do you want a financial return with a social and environmental added value? No one will say to you, "No, Mario, I want all my money to make life miserable for everybody, and I'm working at that 24/7. So it's always been about education. It's never been about we're against this per se. And once they realize that they can do that, and they look at all of the risks, all of the influences that can happen, and looking at all of the KPIs, people realize that sustainability is just basically dramatically reducing the risk, looking at all of the risk involved, the way that you would look at any investment. Unfortunately, what ESG has evolved into is what I said before, is that it's become a fitness club where everyone wants to show they have a membership card to the fitness club, but nobody wants to do the exercise. So when Bloomberg claims there's $50 trillion going into ESG, if that was true, we would not have this conversation, because there would be no climate change problem. There would be no societal problem. There would be no infrastructure problem. There would be no healthcare problem. 50 trillion going into ESG. It's not going in there. It's a box ticking exercise. It's about only risk mitigation. It's not about outcomes. And everybody has now oh, I have to show that I'm doing something. So we're doing ESG and all of that. And we're claiming our fund is Article 9 or committed to sustainability. So it's really become a flavor of the month. But if you pull up the kimono, as they say, there's nothing under there. And unfortunately, most of the media, almost all of the journalists, will never say I'm sorry, Mario, but your children are ugly. You
Mhm.
know, that what you're doing is not really, there. And that lack of critical thought is totally pervasive because people are making money. Consultants, service providers, fund managers, everyone is making money on this, and they don't want to rock the boat. But are they actually restoring the social environmental balance? No, they're not. Climate tech is probably the biggest fraud in the history of mankind. I
Yeah.
mean, come on, 20, 30, 50 billion going into climate tech funds. Not one of them will impact climate in the short term. These are unicorn chasers. They're chasing the next unicorn of 10x, which is fine. I have no problem with that if an investor wants to die rich as quickly as possible and chase unicorns, but don't call it an impact in a climate investment fund. It's not. The cheapest, fastest, quickest way everyone knows for the last thousands of years is restoring the biosphere. Nothing comes close. This dry air capture, I think they raised 600 million from one bank to suck CO2 out of the air. What that is you're taking not even this glass, you're taking a shot glass to the North Sea and you're scooping up a glass of water and say, I'm going to move the North Sea. And people don't confront them because they're making fees and we don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah,
And
it's
unfortunately, we don't manage money, and I don't have external shareholders, so I'm very happy to rock the boat.
I particularly like the framing that we don't need cheerleaders.
No,
Uh, how can startups make the financial system work for all stakeholders?
if they refuse I used to teach at the Rotterdam School of Management, but that was many, many, many years ago. And I stopped teaching there when it became clear that they weren't really interested and the students were not really interested. I told students, businesses respond to pain. And the pain buttons to get business or the financial sector to embrace restoring the biosphere and restoring societal balance is finance, personnel, reputation. Those are the three pain buttons. I try to get the personnel pain button increased by telling students, if you want to change businesses, when the recruiter comes to interview you, refuse to work for them if they don't align with your values. Because at that moment, you have power. Joining the company of 50,000 employees, you have no power. You're not going to get anywhere. You're scratching at a safe with a plastic spoon. But when they come to recruit you, if you're also at a ranked MBA school, you have leverage. Unfortunately, most of the students at this time, this was like 10 or 15 years ago, they were afraid of student loans and didn't do that. And so refusing to work for companies that don't align with your values is a very, very powerful way to get companies to change. I don't know if you remember the Brent Spar Shell story. At
Yeah,
that
yeah,
time, they had a reputational meltdown.
yeah.
And if you worked at Shell, the last thing you were saying at a cocktail party, oh, I work at Shell and it's great, you should come work here. So a lot of people didn't want to work there. And the same thing happened with Dow Chemical. So Dow Chemical, which later was merged with another, became a sustainability superhero. But what was the most well-known brands of Dow Chemical in the 60s? Napalm, Agent Orange. And after the Vietnam War, nobody wanted to work for Dow Chemical. And
Yeah.
if that lasts too long, you've got a big problem as a company. So refusing to work is one. Changing your account, which is very easy to do. You can change your bank account very quickly. You can change your phone account very quickly. So moving your money into asset managers that are serious about sustainability is another way. I would love to see the pension system in the Netherlands have the same rights as you have for electricity bills. I mean, you can change people who provide you power at home, but you can't change your pension fund.
Mhm.
And you have little input to say, hey, I want my money managed this way. At least in Sweden, you can take a portion out. That would also help. That would put pressure on the pension fund. So using your finance reputation is a bit more complex, but finance and personnel is very powerful. Don't work for companies that don't align. The issue has been is that many become very fat, lazy, and comfortable.
Mhm.
I have a nice salary. I work at ABN AMRO. I've got a nice house in Baden, of Laden, and I heb een beetje aanzien. People respect me, and many are afraid to leave or confront the organization. I mean, that clown from ING, that Cohen guy, I've met him. You know, he's the biggest fake out there, and they have him as the communications person
Mhm.
because he, you know, very happy being over there. But if your company doesn't align with your values and you're staying there, that says more about you than it does about the company. So leaving, refusing to work as a student, particularly if you go to RAG WA school, moving your assets, these are pain issues that does get the attention of the financial community and the business community. But it's hard. It's farming, and the financial community are hunters. Some are
Mhm.
pirates, but in general, they're incentivized for short-term behavior. So it's very, very important to realize this is a farming process and it will take time. But if you keep chipping away and stay the course, you will get the behavioral change. Unfortunately, the behavioral change we've gotten with ESG is just kind of Coke Light, Diet Coke, instead
Mhm.
of Coke Original. It's just how do we keep doing the same thing, but pretend that we're actually fixing something?
Yes. What I also experience is in this value chain of impact investment that um, uh, the the valuations are based on metrics,
Yeah,
and not on impact. But
no,
that raises an issue for people in this value chain, because each
absolutely.
stakeholder has its own background, motivations, government having standardized regulations. Uh, However, impact projects are not limited to borders.
No,
So how can we make sure that everybody speaks the same language, or at least understands where the others are coming from?
it's a very essential point that you're bringing up there. For when we did our conference, a TV Live conference, we did it 40 times over 25 years in Europe, Asia, North America, Latin America. So when we did that, every single time I invited the ESG mafia, the the research providers, they always refused to be on the same panel with their colleagues or competitor. Always said, no, 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 I'm happy to speak, but don't put me with MSCI. I'm from Sustainalytics, or don't put me with, okay. Always had that. And I was so tired of it. I got so disgusted with the lack of true sustainability and impact of what was being sold, that we launched something called the Better World Prize, which is a People's Choice Award for that. So we invited every single ESG measurement organization framework to present, and there was not going to be a jury which you can lobby or so. It would be a People's Choice Award. So we got 44 independent research providers with an innovative new way of trying to measure the true sustainability impact of the company. However, or for successfully, we had 100% success rate in not getting a single well-funded big brand willing to present. GRI, Carbon Disclosure Project, PRI, Sustainalytics, MSCI, B Corp, World Benchmark, they all refuse to present because they don't want comparability.
Yeah.
If you can compare, that one, Felix's approach is actually much more innovative than Mario's approach. And that was that, or I knew that that was going to happen. And there were some really excellent, simple approaches in trying to capture what is sustainability, but there were mainly independent ones, and all of the well-funded all refused to present. And S&P said yes, and they said no. So as long as they're eating from the pig trough, they're not going to upset the apple cart. And you'll have every year, oh, how do we merge Carbon Disclosure Project with this one, and how do we come up with it? And lots of bureaucracies and that. And there were some brilliant, simple approaches in trying to, how do we measure true sustainability impact? And there were some really brilliant people. One in particular I liked, they only looked at the board. They only looked at the board of directors, who they were, how they operated, and that gave them more insight than others who was very micromanaging. And that remains the challenge. I was once invited by a very wealthy Singapore family office. Would you come to visit our office? I was in Singapore. So I said, sure. So I opened the door and I have nearly a heart attack because on the wall it says coal trading, oil trading, gas trading. And she was very honest and straight. Said, listen, this is where our family started. This is how we started, and we made lots of money. And I'm trying to get completely away from that. And she says to me, I don't understand ESG. The most toxic companies score so well on these ESG index, Shell and BP, CO2, factories. Unilever, processed food and semi-toxic cosmetics, food processors. And I had to explain to her that the present methodology is not about what you do, it's about how you report. So who reports well? The big multinational. They'll report well for the present, the EcoVadis's, the Sustainalytics, the PRI, and all of that. But they're not restoring the social and environmental balance at all, because they're not looking at what they do. It's only about what they report. And that will always remain. There will be, I don't really worry so much about this woke nonsense happening in the US, because what's putting out in the press releases and these idiot MAGA Republicans is not really where investment is going. People will put out the press releases because it's an election year, so we're not woke, but you always have to follow the money. Don't follow the press releases. Don't believe the press release of APG, which is, I think this is the third or fourth time they put out a press release of them committing billions to impact. And I've seen this variations of this press release over the last 15 years, but I've never really seen the money flows going into impactful investments. So don't believe the press releases. Always follow the money trail. But in general, as people learn more that they can actually make choices with jobs, with investments, with banking, whatever, and they study it a bit more, they'll realize that they can make a difference. But many of them say, oh, I'll buy an index fund, an ETF, and I'm fixing the biosphere. And that's just not true. That's just not true. If it's not important to you, that's okay. It doesn't bother me. It upsets me, but it is as it is. It's your money. Just stop pretending that you are one of the superheroes by investing in sustainability that has nothing to do with restoring the environment or society.
you are a promoter of deep systemic change.
Yeah.
Can you explain to us the advantages of systemic change above maybe an approach based on the chaos theory?
Yeah. Let's take the new flavor of the month, EVs, electric vehicles. Okay.
Yep.
So tens of billions are going into EVs, battery producing, mining of lithium and all of that stuff. So sounds great, but cars are parked 20 to 24 hours a day. The average distance driven is 40 kilometers. In the US, half of most trips are 10 kilometers or less. You can walk or you can cycle that. And all this money is going into these EVs, and where, Tesla's a superhero, when most of the time they're parked. And all of this mining for glass and aluminum and rubber and steel and all this for a vehicle that's hardly used, for a small group of people that might need it regularly, but most are just parked. Look at all the cars parked on the street. Wherever you go, they're always there.
Mm-hmm.
And public transport on demand is far more efficient. They have to raise $2.1 trillion a year, all the different public transport systems. None of them make money except one, the one in Hong Kong. And investing in that is far, far more efficient with far less environmental destruction. Okay, you won't have an extension of your penis because your car is your extension of your penis and your ego. But if you really want to reduce the need for all of this electrification, for all of these EVs and all this infrastructure, focus on public transport and public transport on demand. Make public transport free. That would be a much more efficient use, because a lot of resources are used to calculate and receive the money that's paid to go on there. And it'd be a much more pleasant city to live in if there were people were using public transport or using their bikes. These are not complex stories, because we did a masterclass yesterday with the Professor Michaud, who made a 1,000-page report talking exactly about what you did. And he studied how much stuff do we need to transition completely to a full renewable energy transition for EVs, for power generation, for running steel mills, etc. And he saw, at the scale that we want to do it, in the way that we're doing it now, you would need, 20 times more copper. It takes 10 to 15 years to build a copper mine. So you're talking of there's just not enough stuff at the level of inefficiencies that we have. So we need to shift far more to a much more resource efficient and much more critical thinking. Do we need all of these roads? Okay, for truck transport, I can get that. But does everybody, I haven't had a car in maybe 15, 20 years. I don't have any problem getting around. I cycle or walk or take the public transport or take the train. It's not really a problem. It's a choice. And I think people need to be honest, and everybody wants to be kind of partly pregnant. I'm kind of in there, but I don't want to. And the mistake that was always made with the systemic change is people pushed on the climate change issue, the issue of sacrifice. It's not about sacrifice. It's about resilience. This is about making your economy far more resilient, which is a much more, let's call it, empowering story that you can convince businesses. Businesses understand the idea of resilience. They don't like the idea of sacrifice, but resilience, oh, okay, I get that. And this is really what it's about. So the messaging has always been incorrect, and lots of false information. We had several people for the first time lobbying and trying to intimidate me from not allowing Professor Michaud to come on the session because he was disrupting their financial model of making money on investing in that. So people, need to understand, particularly the critics, why are they doing that? What is their driver? Fortunately for us, I'm not part of any organization. I won't join any organization that would have me as a member. I use the Groucho Marx approach to membership. We don't have external shareholders and we don't use sponsors. We don't have sponsors on any of our master classes. And that allows us to have critical thought. And that is lacking a lot. You'll see a lot of big conferences around sustainability, ESG, climate, that a huge list of sponsors. And then you start looking at the program as a professor or an academic. For you, critical thought is essential. That is your whole reason for teaching. And that we see a lot of lack of critical thought because everybody wants to be best friends. Nobody wants to say your children are ugly. Few people, media doesn't want to embarrass the political power brokers because we want to be able to go with them on their trips and have access to them. And yeah, then you're not going to really get anything changing unless there's a mass movement of people realizing I'm moving my money, I'm moving my company, I'm leaving the company I'm working for. I refuse to buy from certain products unless there's a serious commitment there. So it's really not that hard to do, as I said before, if you want to do it. It's just really hard to do if you don't want to do it.
Yeah, but maybe the children are ugly because
Most of the time.
yeah, because the projects are being approached with a step-by-step
Yeah,
approach, but
true.
it's the challenges are holistic. It's
Yeah,
easy to calculate, to make it a small project and to calculate the profit of a small project. But when the challenge, it's wicked problems. So one
yeah,
thing has to do with something else. And
absolutely.
there is this Dutch guy that is cleaning the oceans from the plastic soup, but he ends up with a full boat of plastic
Yeah,
and no harbor to bring it to because no
right.
country wants to have all
Yeah.
this.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of impediments to getting full transition. I get that, but I also hear all the time from Shell, and I mean, believe it or not, I actually did work on oil rigs for several years in the North Sea, in Texas, in Iran, in France. So I know what it is to drill a hole in the ground for an oil exploration and gas exploration company. And all of them say the same thing. Oh, it's going to be so hard, this energy transition. So much money needs to be going. Not one person says to them, in the 1800s, there were no gas stations. There were no refineries. We built all of that. And now we can build energy infrastructure and other support and resource efficiency even faster and cheaper. And they're not confronted with the nonsense. I'm always amazed at the rubbish that people put out, and no one confronts them, whether it's a journalist or whatever. They just kind of accept it, particularly if they represent lots of money. They take that as a given. And people, you can be polite and critical because solutions are there. There is no lack of solutions. There are so many brilliant, innovative companies in the Netherlands has one of the most sophisticated solution for um, circular economy solar panels, which doesn't use PFAS, doesn't use glass, doesn't use aluminium, will go on any roof, and there's 90% less CO2 emissions. So large. It exists here. It's near Eindhoven. Air conditioning that uses 90% less of it. So the solutions are there. But the driver from a large asset base is around unicorn chasing. And basically, particularly if you look at food tech or agriculture, the largest employer in the world is small-scale agriculture. It's 1.3 billion people. The second largest, another boring space, is hospitality, about 330 million. And I was asked to speak at a conference on how tech is going to fix everything. And I said, I don't believe that. And they were saying, yeah, tech is this and that. And I said, there's 1 billion youth unemployment coming our way. Are they all going to be working in AI and coding? They're all going to get jobs, the 1 billion, when the largest employer is still small-scale agriculture? And where do most of the institutional investors and private equity funds in climate tech, they want to invest in it? How do we get rid of these farmers? How do we, grow food with robots and that? And we don't need farmers. Why should we restore the health of the soil? We don't need it. We can just, run it all on robots and greenhouses. So the return, the structural return that the financial system provides is substantial, and investors want to see a return. I understand that. They want to die rich as quickly as possible. Maybe that's not their original intention, but that. And there's a wonderful TV show it's a Netflix show that everyone should watch, called Inventing Anna. It was about a so-called con artist who fooled the New York elite and the banking system to give her lots and lots of money, and she was a fraud. How easy it is to fool them when they think that you're part of the tribe. And that's pretty much how it is in a lot of the financial system, because most of our work is raising money, so we know where to go, and there are people that are serious. But the system is very much pressuring on incentivization for short-term behavior. That's the financial system. They're all incentivized for short-term behavior. They're hunters, and this is about farming. And it's very easy to retool the system if you want to do it. But if you don't want to do it, I mean, I just read that the Netherlands wants to build 3 nuclear power plants. There is no nuclear power plant in the world that can be built without government money. There's no insurance company that will insure it. There's no investment community that wants to invest in it in the present technology. And it takes 10 to 15 years. The price for power is, I get the base load, but that's a stupid way of allocating resources. But the lobbyists say, hey, we need base load power. We got to do it this way. And they don't think of, well, it's going to take 10 or 15 years. What's the price of power going to be? One of the best things that came out of this horrible war in Ukraine, which people keep forgetting, is that energy consumption dropped in many places by 1/3. All of a sudden, when power energy was expensive, we could save. Oh, so you mean I can survive by wearing a sweater in the house and I'm not going to die? And there is so much to gain by just wasting less. It's about resilience. We don't have to, sacrifice that much. It's about resilience. And
Yeah,
that was clear.
but in one of your articles, you say people are busy being busy.
Yeah.
What should we do to not become overwhelmed?
First of all, get your act together. So many people who work, well, I mean, we're dealing mainly with the financial sector. Most of the people in the banking and the private bank don't even have a good CRM system, a customer relation a database system. So they all are, say they're disorganized. At the end of the day, they have 100 unanswered emails. I have a lot to do. There's only 3 of us, and 2 of them work part-time. We do master class, we do investor salons, we do an outreach, we do fundraising with a very small group, but we build systems that make it easy for us, and we're very disciplined. Everyone will tell you they're busy being busy, and you have to chase them 10 or 15 or 20 times. Except Felix, you write him, he sends you an answer right away. He's, one of the few that does that. And they're all chasing and busy and always with excuses. And then you finally get through to them and you say, "Oh, Mario, sorry, I've been so busy." And I always say, I haven't been lying in a hammock either, but I seem to be able to reach out to you. One guy, I remember, he was from a multi-family office, 7th generation. I love this story. He writes me, "Robert, I can't talk Thursday. Can we talk Friday?" It was about a very important investment. So I said, "Sure." And I wrote back, "What time?" So every day for 6 weeks, I kept repeating the question because he wasn't responding. What time, what time, what time, what time, what time? And people just use that as an excuse. Get yourself organized. Use proper CRM systems or whatever database. Don't try to run your life on your phone because it's not going to work. Stop looking at Instagram the whole day and Facebook and Twitter, and respond to people in a timely manner. And if you're not interested, say, "Thank you, but this is not for me." That's fine. I just find it very rude, a lack of social skills. And it's not an excuse to saying, "I've been busy." Everyone is busy post-COVID because all of a sudden we could get out of the house and go places and travel. It doesn't mean that you get things done. Most of the clients that we have, I've never met. I've never met them face to face. Like Felix, I've never met. And I've never met you until today. So it is possible to get things done without running around, and just organize yourself and stop hiding behind this nonsense. "I'm overwhelmed." Why are you overwhelmed? What are you doing with your day
It's
that you're
it,
so
it's
overwhelmed?
it's almost what a friend of mine said. He always called a mobile phone a
Yeah.
middle management iron.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, when you are constantly on the phone, you don't have your things together.
No,
You're not organized. You didn't
no,
manage it well
no, and not,
because
not
people
at
need to
all.
call you. Yeah.
And it's not that big, difficult. I'm not asking you to cure cancer or create, nuclear fusion at room temperature. These are very simple things. Most of the things are rather simple. It's a question, is it important to you? If it's not important to you, keep chasing Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of the diversions that you have, and end the day with 200 or 150 unanswered emails. And then start the day with again and again and again. And then after 3-4 weeks or 8 weeks, after sending 15 reminders, you finally respond. You say, "What's up?" Well, all of the things I've been writing you for 6 days, what's up? And that is really become almost a pandemic of its own.
But how do you cope with that on your own platform where you have a matchmaking system?
Yeah. Well,
Can you give an example how it works?
yeah, I mean, it's, I say jokingly, it's akin to cleaning toilets. It's not fun to do, cleaning toilets, but you have to do it every day. And it's a discipline. And every day we look at who we need, we make a selection, who fits through it was originally built as a dating engine, a Ukrainian Canadian dating engine, and 99% of the companies use it for matching men and women, women and women, men and men. So a friend of mine who built the app for the Apple Store. True story. He's listening to Amazon. He said, you should build a dating engine. Most people want to connect in your network, or they want to meet other people. So we took this dating engine, we adapted it, and we had 50,000 readers. They get the TBLI Weekly, and maybe 20,000 of those are investment allocators. So they're either an angel investor or a sovereign wealth fund and everything. And we onboarded, I think, 6,000 of those. And every week we add more from people that we know that are looking for funding. And we coded them according to their interests: early stage, late stage, mobility, healthcare, transportation, how much assets, et cetera. And then we make a selection. We're hired by a fund or direct deals. And then we do the outreach, and we write very, very short emails, very short, because if it's more than one screen, they don't read it. So it's got to be really short. And we send it out, and then we send every couple of days variations of that, and keep chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing. And then we'll send it WhatsApp, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all kinds of messages, because it's not that they're angry we're reaching out. They don't see it. So if you don't see it and you don't know that it's relevant to you, you don't respond. And today I was reaching out to this gentleman, must be 6 or 8 weeks, maybe more, regularly, constantly. Can you squeeze me in? And then finally, sometimes you send the mail or the WhatsApp, and they respond after 10 other messages. And his PA says, okay, do you have time then? Okay, fine. And it's just, as I said, it's toilet cleaning. It's not fun to do. It's not inspiring, but you have to go through that process because people don't know what you're contacting them is important.
Mhm.
They just don't know. They don't take the time. And most of the time they don't read well, at all. There was one.
It's missionary work. Yeah, yeah.
It's very missionary. It was one company in Czech who got €100 million for investment in early stage companies and sustainability. And this was a company that had a solution for the leather tanning world. And I reached out to them and I kept back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then he writes me, oh, we can't invest in this. They're in the UK. They're in the US.
Mhm.
I said, no, they're in the UK. Where does it say anywhere? And he never responded. I sent 3, 4 reminders to that.
Yeah, okay.
And so that's the situation. They're all busy being busy, and they don't take the time, calling you, Mario, tell me all about it. I'd love to learn more about what you're doing. Who calls these days with that type of, or who calls you to tell you a good joke, something funny, a humorous story? And people used to do that. They used to call and, hey, did you hear what happened to this? Did you hear this one? And I think we've lost that ability to just connect and just have a human conversation. I'm not saying it's not about transactional work. It doesn't have to be a transaction. It can be just, a nice chat. And I do that, all the time. I'm open all the time for people who want to chat about saying, and sometimes I'll say, I'm sorry, this is not really relevant, but I respond to everyone. I always respond to everyone because I always find it very rude not responding. And I know most people don't bother, say, he'll go away.
Mm.
It's a habit. It's a terrible habit.
Yeah.
And it's why so many people are alienated from, we don't take any time for ourselves or for friends or neighbors. And
But
for me, that's important.
we are brought up with individualism.
Yeah,
It
unfortunately.
it starts in the crib.
Yeah, and but it doesn't have to be, it's a question of what's important to you. If I had a previous, I worked with a woman who was just an awful Wall Street banker, and her attitude is just ignore people, don't say anything, don't share anything, don't do anything, just extract,
Yeah.
the
Keep the seed
resources
warm.
you
Yeah.
need and move on. I'm not a mining person. You know, there's more than enough for everyone. In the Credit Suisse report before they went bankrupt, they published that there was, at the time, this was about a year and a half ago, between 4.5 and 5 times more wealth than there is global GDP. So there's plenty of wealth to fix everything, even if people would pay their taxes. So that's not really, you know, an issue. And we just need to hold people to account, to show some social skills and share. You know, this whole idea of sharing versus extraction. Everyone seems to be obsessed with dying rich as quickly as possible. And I'm not saying that the youth are better. They're also looking for, how do I learn on TikTok quick, get rich quick schemes?
Yeah.
You know, how do I, you know, follow these influencers who are selling me garbage? And we need to share. We need to help each other, because the solutions are there. We can
Yeah.
fix this. We can fix climate. We can do a lot of things. But, you know, if you're only going to be hunting and extractive, yeah, doing this doesn't mean you have more. It's a perception that you have more. So I think that's my greater frustration with people, rather than the lack of interest, serious interest by the investment community toward restoring the social environmental balance.
Unfortunately, we have to keep this Future Now show to a viewable size.
It's okay, that's
So,
fine.
did I forget to ask something as my
No,
last?
no, it was a very lovely conversation, and I appreciate that this work that you do is not, people don't appreciate it. They don't realize the effort that's put into this. You've got to get people together. You've got to organize it. You've got to reach out. People don't respond right away. Then you got to reach out to somebody else. So the fact that you're taking the time without being extractive and actually creating a platform for people to get some inspiration and learning is important. So you should compliment yourselves for doing that. So thank you.
Okay, Robert, thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
And the viewers of the Future Now shows, thank you for watching.